Welcome to Lunch with the Lord. I'm Pastor Mark. We're in Mark chapter 13, going to be starting verse 15 this lesson. But before we begin, Jeremiah 15:16, thy words were found, and I did eat them, and thy word was unto me the joy and the rejoicing of my heart. Now, as we saw in verse 14 last lesson, Jesus warns the disciples concerning the abomination of desolation that would be set up in the temple of God during the tribulation period. And then he warns them and he says, then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. And we said that Jesus said those who are in Judea, and Judea is the southern area, southern region of Israel. And he said, let them flee out of Judea, either go south or go east, but get out of Judea. And he says here, now we take up this lesson in verse 15, verses 15 to 18, and it says, and let him that is on the housetop not go down into the house, neither enter therein to take anything out of his house. And let him that is in the field not turn back again for to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter. All right? Now, Jesus is saying that when this abomination of desolation is set up in the temple of God, they are to flee as fast as possible. Don't even think of packing a bag. If you're up on the rooftop and you're putting a new roof on your house and you get word and it's confirmed that the abomination of desolation or the image is set up in the temple of God, throw your tools down, get off the roof, and just start going. Start moving. Don't even get into the house and get a suitcase out and start packing the bags and, I need food and whatever. No, you don't have time for that. You don't have, Jesus said, flee and flee now, right? And then he says in verse 17, woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. Now this woe unto them, this word means to have pity upon them. Have pity upon them who are with child, that are pregnant, and those that have little infants that give suck in those days. Why? Because of the haste that is needed and the burden of trying to flee quickly while being pregnant or while carrying a little infant. You're going when Jesus is saying, when this thing happens, you need to go and go now and go fast. And then he says in verse 18, don't let it happen in winter. Pray that it doesn't happen in winter. Because why? Because of the temperature change and the weather conditions would make it difficult, and especially for older people when they're trying to escape. Right? You're going to be tempted to want to take clothes and pack bags and everything, and for older people, they can't take the cold weather so much. And it'd be more difficult for older people to flee in the winter, even for anyone if it's colder. Because when you go, Jesus is saying, you don't have time to pack bags. Take your long johns and your wool socks and all these other things. You don't have time for that. You got to go. Go now. Now, in Matthew's Gospel, in chapter 24 and verse 20, Matthew also is speaking about, when he writes about the same exact portion of Scripture that we're in now, he includes, don't let it happen, not on the Sabbath. Pray that it doesn't happen on the Sabbath day. Now, why is that important? Why? Well, because Jewish custom did not allow on the Sabbath for people to travel long distances. You've read in the Bible, this person went a Sabbath day's journey, right? They went a Sabbath day's journey to wherever they went. The Jews that lived by the law, the Jews that lived by the interpretation of the law would be limited on how far they could travel. So if you had a Jewish person and they lived by the interpretation of the law, and this thing happens on the Sabbath day, they would be, in their minds, they would only be able to travel a certain distance, and it's not very far at all. I don't know exactly how far. I don't know if it's a mile or a little less than a mile or maybe a little more than a mile, but I know it's not far. But if it happens on the Sabbath day, there's going to be people that are going to be limited in their way of escaping, because they're not going to travel very far on the Sabbath day. They're going to feel convicted not to go far. But Christian Jews might feel the need to overlook this stipulation of a Sabbath day's journey based on the present circumstances, right? So pray that it doesn't happen in the winter. Pray that it doesn't happen on the Sabbath day, and pray for those who are pregnant and those who are little kids. Why? Because this is urgent. Jesus is telling his disciples, when you see this thing happen, you need to flee and get out and go. Go to the mountains, and not the mountains in Judea, the mountains somewhere God will be guiding, but those that flee, but the mountains somewhere else. Now, verses 19 and 20 says, "For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of the creation, which God created unto this time, neither shall there be. And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. But for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days." The persecutions and the afflictions in the tribulation period will be unlike any other time in history. They will be all directed toward the Jews and towards the Christians. And you may say, I thought you were talking about there wasn't going to be any church in the tribulation period. There's not. The Christians, the believers that are there in the tribulation period, are people who came to Christ after the tribulation period began. They see the signs, they see what's going on, they remember what someone told them what a Christian told them before they were raptured. God gets his word to these Gentile people and to these even Jewish people, and they put their faith in Christ. And so all this persecution will be coming against them. This is Satan's final effort to rid the world of any influence of God. He wants total dominion of the world without God. But deep down in Satan's heart, he knows that his end is near. The reason why he's tremendously increasing his persecutions and afflictions upon the people of this world, especially upon believers and the Jews, is because he can feel the flames of the lake of fire on his body. He can sense it. He knows his time is short. But God will be merciful to shorten the days, because if he does not, all humans will be killed. He says it in what? In verse 20. And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh would be saved. The persecution, the sufferings, during the last half of that tribulation period is going to be so intense that unless God is merciful and shortens the days, everyone's going to be dead. Everyone. It says God does it for the elect's sake. When he says the word elect, he's talking about the Jewish nation. He's not talking about Christian, he's not talking about Calvinism. No, he's talking about the Jewish nation, the elect. The elect people of God through Abraham, the nation of Israel. Now, verse 21 says, and then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or lo, he is there, do not believe him. For false Christs and false prophets shall rise, and shall show signs and wonders, to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. But take heed, behold, I have foretold you all things. Now, verses 21 to 23 deal with false Christs coming in on the scene now in this last part of the tribulation period. The judgment upon the earth will be so severe that the people on earth will seek for some form of relief. There will be false Christs that will appear on the scene. They will be sent by Satan's kingdom to deceive and to draw away many from the truth of the real Christ. They will proclaim that they are the anointed one from God. But Jesus said to take heed and what? And do not believe them. And then he says in verse 22, he says that, and they shall show signs and wonders. Signs and wonders. Signs means the purpose of a sign is to produce the claim, is to prove the claim of the one performing the sign. And then it says wonders. The purpose of wonders is to cause the people to be amazed and to marvel. So in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 9, they are called lying wonders. Lying wonders. Their whole purpose is to deceive. So you'll have false Christ and false messiahs coming out in the last days. They will be showing signs, right? Signs to prove their claim that they are the Christ, right? And they will show wonders, wonders in the sky, but they'll be lying wonders to amaze people and to draw people into believing and trusting in them. Jesus warns the Jews against accepting anyone's claim to be the Christ based only on the fact that they perform miracles. Right? Jesus said, beware of someone who comes and proclaims themselves to be the Messiah, and the only thing they have is that they base it upon miracles. Jesus' messiahship was based upon previous testimony of the Old Testament, by the Old Testament prophets. The Old Testament, they foretold. John the Baptist foretold. Isaiah prophesied. Jeremiah prophesied. The Old Testament is filled with prophecies of Jesus Christ as the Messiah. And Jesus said, beware of people in the end times who come, and the only thing they have that bears testimony to them are their miracles. And then he says here also in verse 22, he says, and shall show signs and wonders to what? To seduce, right? To seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. And this Greek word for seduce is apokenazo. apoplaneo, and it means to lead astray or away from something. It's the leading us into error. So this is what their purpose is doing. Their signs and wonders of these false Christs are to lead people into error, to lead them into error, to believing in a false Christ. And then it says, even if it were possible to deceive and to lead into error the very elect. Because the tribulation is the time of Jacob's trouble. Again, this word elect refers to the elect nation of Israel. It's not talking about election where people get elected unto salvation. No, it's talking about here in this context, it's talking about the elect nation of Israel and not, what Calvin taught. All right? I'm going to start verse 24 next lesson. But until then, walk with the Lord. I know he walks with you.